Hello, my friends. Welcome to our second screencast. Today we are going to start our mini lectures on The Catcher in the Rye, which is our next text. And I'm very hopeful that the majority of you have been able to get the book. I did try to make sure that everybody had the text before we left, but I know quite a few of you were absent. I have provided audiobooks on our first resource page on Schoology, and I have also provided the online text, which can be very helpful. But I always think that having the physical book is better. Maybe it's because I'm old school, but I find it easier to read. So if you haven't been able to get the text, I highly recommend that you order it off Amazon. It's pretty easy to get, and it's not very expensive. But of course, if you can't, you do have access to the text online still. And I'm excited to read it with you all. The Catcher in the Rye is one of my favorite books to read with juniors, particularly because the main character, Holden Caulfield, is 16. He's around your guys' age. And I think that the struggles that he goes through in this text are very much struggles that we have when we're in our last couple of years of high school. So I hope you guys enjoy it with me. It has been the book that my students enjoy the most. So you guys will have to tell me if that's still the case. But first, let's talk a little bit about my expectations for these lectures and our note-taking practice. We're going to take about 5 weeks to read this book. We're going to be doing activities as we go through. So every week I will have a short mini lecture that is about something regarding The Catcher in the Rye. This one will probably be the longest one just because we're talking about these expectations, but they're going to be pretty short. I'm going to ask that you take notes on these lectures and turn them into me for credit. You can handwrite your notes and just take a photo of them and put them in the form and send it to me, or you can type them instead straight into the document. Either is totally fine with me. Note-taking is just a great skill to be practicing and to get better at. If you work at a workplace that has any sort of staff meetings, which most do, note-taking can be helpful. When you go to college, your professors will tend to lecture a little bit more. So having those note-taking skills before you leave high school is very helpful. If you want some pro tips on how to take great notes, you can check out this crash course study skills resource here. They have a lot of really good info on how to take good notes, and I will have this PowerPoint linked as a resource for you, so you can go check it out, okay? So take a second, decide if you're going to type, decide if you're going to handwrite, go get some paper, go get some, if you're like me, you're going to have like 4 different colored pens. It's going to be great. You can pause this lecture and come on back, and then we will get started on our introduction to The Catcher in the Rye. Welcome back. I'm glad you're here for lecture 1 of an introduction to Catcher in the Rye. We're going to be talking about 3 things today. We're going to be talking first about the genre of The Catcher in the Rye. We're going to be talking about Holden Caulfield, the main character, and then we're going to be talking a little bit about some controversy that surrounds this book and why it's still a worthwhile piece of literature to read. So let's start first discussing the genre. The Catcher in the Rye is a genre called a Bildungsroman. I can never say it right. If you look it up on Google and you do the word thing, it's Bildungsroman. So you are familiar with this type of genre because almost every single teen movie is this genre. It essentially is a coming of age story. So when you have a Bildungsroman, your protagonist or your main character is usually forced away from home to go on a journey of some kind, and this journey can be metaphorical, it can be physical. In this case, Holden is going to be in New York on his own for a weekend. There's usually some sort of psychological or moral growth And with Holden in this setting, he's definitely psychologically struggling. Does he grow or not? We'll have to decide for ourselves at the end of the text. Usually, the goal in these types of stories is to mature. There's usually some sort of self discovery that happens. One of the major conflicts that happens within the text is with society, and we definitely see this with Holden. And then there's some grand themes of struggle. So that character is struggling with growing or maturing or knowing who they are or society or whatever it is. So I just put some examples of where we see this in movies today. You see them in a lot of texts. Well, technically, Perks of Being a Wallflower was a book first, but that's another story for another time. But essentially, a coming of age story where you have a young protagonist that's maturing, finding themselves, trying to figure out who they are in society. So, our main character is Holden Caulfield, and these are all different depictions of him. That red hat is pretty important. He's always displayed wearing that. It's a red hunting hat. He is an adolescent American in the 1950s, and he's trying to figure out how to relate to a grown-up world that he finds deeply flawed and unsympathetic. In his words, he calls pretty much all of the adult society phonies. That's his big word. He's going to use the word phony all the time. Our story revolves around Holden Caulfield as he leaves his boarding school and spends the weekend in New York City. Here he finds himself in a world of corruption, unkindness, and hypocrisy. Over and over, we're going to see Holden resisting growing up in this kind of world. His failures to and then we're going to see him fail to reconcile himself with the values of the adult world. He's very aware that he is 16, about to be an adult, and when he looks at society around him, he doesn't want to be a part of that phony society. This struggle is ultimately going to put him in a mental health institution. That's right. Holden writes this story from his extended stay in psychiatric treatment. So, in the last chapter of the book, chapter 26, Holden narrates, "That's all I'm going to tell about. I could probably tell you what I did after I went home and how I got sick and all." And he's not talking about physically sick, he's talking about mentally sick. "And what school I'm supposed to go to next fall after I get out of here," because he's in the institution. "But I don't feel like it. I really don't. That stuff doesn't interest me too much right now. A lot of people, especially this one psychoanalyst guy they have here, keeps asking me if I'm going to apply myself when I go back to school next September. It's such a stupid question, in my opinion. I mean, how do you know what you're going to do till you do it? The answer is, you don't. I think I am, but how do I know?" So, chapter 26 really highlights that he is in a place getting some sort of mental help. But in the first chapter, you will notice that he is narrating his story to someone who is there to specifically listen. So on some level, you are his therapist, listening to his story and trying to decide what he needs in order to get better. Because of this, there really isn't a true quote-unquote plot. Rather, we experience observations that Holden has on his experiences and then his feelings about those experiences and the people associated with them. Okay, last part. We need to talk about the controversy in this book. It's been a banned book in the past, and there's still plenty of controversy over it today. And that is because of these three things: vulgar language, teenagers drinking and smoking, and some references to sex. So Holden, as a character, has vulgar language, and he uses it pretty freely throughout the book. In the first chapter, you'll get a good experience of that. He smokes and he drinks. He's 16 years old, so he's motivated by the idea of sex. Overall, Holden is not a good example. But here's the thing. If you get caught up in that, you will totally miss the point of this book. After all, remember, Holden is in psychiatric treatment at this point. He's not healthy and he is not meant to be emulated. J.D. Salinger is not telling you that this is how you should live your life. But what Holden is Holden is a young person who's seeking to find his identity and his role in a world that he sees as big and bad. He's constantly pushing against society. Therefore, the cussing, the drinking, the smoking, these are all things he shouldn't be doing societally. And he's doing that to try to figure out what's real and what's not real. The beauty in this book is watching Holden struggle with the adult systems that he sees around them. He's still young, but he recognizes that he's moving towards the adult world and he's not ready to be a part of it. At one point in these 5 chapters, he'll even talk about how his hair is starting to go gray at 16. He doesn't want to be a phony, which is what he attributes to most adults. And he ironically wants to protect anything and everything that is innocent. All Holden wants is authenticity and innocence to win. We see this over and over when we read. Holden is trying to hold on to innocence, which is so ironic and a little bit hypocritical when you consider that he's using pretty vulgar language and drinking and smoking and all of these other things. But Holden trying to hold on to innocence, to be the protector of the innocent, is even seen in the title of Catcher in the Rye. So the title of the novel is a glance at Holden's dream of protecting other, younger children from this curse of maturity, of getting older. So stick with me here. Robert Burns is a musician, and he had a then famous song that has a line that says, "If a body meet a body coming through the rye." And I've actually linked the song here, so if you want to go in and listen to it, you can. It's a doozy. Holden mishears this lyric, and he thinks the line is, "If a body catch a body coming through the rye," instead of "meet a body." So he uses the mistaken version of this song as a slogan for his dream. He wants to catch innocent children who play in the rye field because they are in danger of falling over an unseen edge of a cliff. And to Holden, this edge of the cliff is adulthood. He wants to catch these children who are playing in this field who can't see the edge before they fall, to protect them, to keep them innocent. And this is going to be his struggle throughout the book. And this is why this book redeems itself. Don't miss the point of the book. Holden's whole desire is to protect innocence and seek authenticity in people as much as possible. Don't get bogged down in his language choice. He's a hypocritical kid who's trying to navigate society as he struggles with his boundaries. I'm excited to see what you guys think. The first 5 chapters. He's a super interesting dude. I think he's one of the more fascinating literary characters. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you and seeing your notes. Come see me during office hours if you have questions. And I'll look forward to touching base with you all soon. Bye.